I'll start off by saying this video is going to include spoilers on Jordan Peele's movies Get Out and Us, but if you haven't seen them by now, I highly encourage you to watch them. They're relevant to the class, but also relevant to the world we live in, and just generally really good movies. I'm going to talk about how Jordan Peele's directorial style reflects American Gothic themes, taking on topics like race and horror in a really clever and thought-provoking way. All of Jordan Peele's movies star African American main characters and put the audience into a perspective of Black Americans in a way that nearly no other horror movies do, or a lot of movies in general, honestly. Before we get into it, I'm going to give you a quick synopsis of both of these movies. Get Out opens up with a Black character walking through a white suburb in the middle of the night before he gets kidnapped and thrown into a stranger's car. Then we're introduced to our protagonist, Chris, who's going on a trip with his white girlfriend, Rose, to meet her parents for the first time. Chris has some major anxiety about her parents being judgmental because he's the first Black boyfriend Rose has ever had, and she assures him they're as liberal as it gets and says they're the kind of people who would have voted for Obama a third time if they could. While they're there, the parents throw this huge party where Chris notices he's the only Black person there besides this one other guy whose date is a much older white lady, and we later find out that he's the guy who got kidnapped in the beginning. Long story short, Chris has been kidnapped by Rose because her family kidnaps Black people so her mom, Missy, can hypnotize them. Once they're hypnotized, they perform a brain transplant so one of the white people from the party, whoever bid the highest at this silent auction, can take Chris's body. Essentially, Rose's family and all the people at this party see Black people as physically and genetically superior to them and wish to be them. They wish to be Black people. In the end, Chris kills the entire family in self-defense, and his best friend Rod, who's been kind of suspicious the whole time, shows up and saves him. Us is about a family mainly focused on the mom, Adelaide. They're on a trip at their lake house when it gets broken into by doppelgangers of every member of the family, and they call themselves the Tethered. The doppelgangers wear red jumpsuits and don't have proper English-speaking abilities. Throughout the movie, the family is just trying to escape their doppelgangers. Eventually, we find out that everybody on Earth has a doppelganger living in this underground slum, wishing to be a part of the world that we live in up above. They've all come together to take over the world and kill their privileged counterparts. A famous quote from the movie comes from when Adelaide asks her doppelganger who they are, to which she responds, "We're Americans." In the end, it's revealed that when Adelaide was a kid, she wandered into the slums and her doppelganger took her place in the world, meaning that the entire time, Adelaide was actually one of the Tethered. According to the essay Glossary of the Gothic Race, American Gothic focuses on a racial other. It says that Gothic texts use racialized vocabulary to induce terror and horror at the expense of the racial other. The American Gothic and Jordan Peele's Get Out, An Effective Exploration by Taylor Reisdorf explores the idea of American Gothic being capable of both haunting back and haunting forward. This means that horrors of the past materialize themselves in ghost-like or other horrific forms, which we've seen in a few of the short stories we've read for this class. Reisdorf talks specifically about the importance of Get Out coming out during Trump's presidency rather than the allegedly post-race era of Barack Obama. She quotes Peele saying, "In the Trump era, it's way more obvious extreme racism exists, but there are still a lot of people who think we don't have a racist bone in our bodies." This pertains to how the villains in Get Out don't hate Black people, but actually really admire them. In their captivity and mutilation of Black individuals, Get Out serves as a modern slavery story. Much like Malone's character in The Ballad of Black Tom, the antagonist turned a blind eye to racism, yet utilized this privilege to perform these evil, racist acts. It's a call out to all liberal white people who refuse to acknowledge the racism ingrained within them in this country. Both of the likable characters, Chris and Rod, are Black and hold a lot of hesitations about white people throughout the movie. In this way, I think Jordan Peele kind of flips who the racial other is in this American Gothic film. Rather than a Gothic story of Black people being inherently evil, he tells a story of the reality for many Black Americans, which is that white people and white environments are scary and sometimes life-threatening. Us, on the other hand, makes a totally different point about the human condition for Black Americans. We're Americans, the Gothic in Jordan Peele's Us from Sheffield Gothic says that Peele draws on the racist stereotype of the African American as primitive to put forth this idea of people of color seeing themselves as racist society sees them, a degenerate beast striving for control and authority. Here, the Gothic creature in question is a literal reflection of oneself. The racial other isn't Black people or white people, but the internal battle faced by people of color in America. There's a version of Black people that white people expect, and the version white people accept. Then there's this version that was never given a chance, doomed to an underground slum lacking any opportunities within a system that has failed them since birth. They resort to violence and outrage to finally gain respect. Just as The Tethered are a reflection of the protagonist, this movie is a blatantly horrific reflection of America, which of course is a major trait of American Gothic. This whole thing is even emphasized by the title of the movie being Us, meaning it's showing the audience ourselves, but also the US. I could go into much further detail about how specific scenes in both of these movies serve as commentary on this reality we exist in, but the presentation would become a feature film. The point is, Jordan Peele wants his movies to force a white audience into a black perspective and give a black audience a voice. The horrors in these movies are not black people themselves, as they are in a lot of other American Gothic stories, but rather racism itself, and the fear that there is no escape, that even in a time with black presidents, there's this impending force working against black Americans, is a fear that's reality for every person of color in this country. Back then, now, and forever.